Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Raffini, your Government Affairs Chair here at the Realtor Association of Pioneer Valley, and we're here for another edition of the Mayoral Minute. And joining me, as always, our CEO, Brendan Bailey, our President, Cheryl Malandrinos, and Michelle Stegall. And we are very pleased today to have our special guest, the Mayor of Holyoke, the Honorable Joshua Garcia. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate your time. So, you know, as we had a little pre-discussion, and as we talked about, the purpose for these sessions is basically just, you know, outreach. We like to let leaders in the communities that we service know about the things that we offer, because a lot of times there's some surprises there. There's a lot of things that we can do program-wise, not just at our local level, but in accessing resources from our state and national associations. And Brendan's going to get into some more detail about that in a minute. But, you know, we can tackle anything from helping cities and towns draft, you know, language for ordinances, how to, you know, change master plans, how to rezone areas so that they can become vibrant again, you know, a whole host of different things. And then there are some community type grants that we can utilize for projects like, you know, city parks or monuments or different things that, you know, smaller scale things that really help improve you know, the life in the community. And, you know, community is a big piece of what we do, because as we often say, we don't sell houses, we sell communities, and we live in those communities. So it's important for us that we're viewed as partners in that. You know, we literally live where we work, and you know, we epitomize that. So and of course, we'd love to hear from you with some success stories, what's going on in Holyoke, and how we can help, and hopefully this is a great conversation starter for us to you know, partner up on some things as we can. And Brendan, did you want to add some things there?
Sure. Yeah, and Peter, you know, it's a great segue into the ways that we can obviously help. And first and foremost is either myself or our members, and specifically constituents like Michelle. You know, everybody is involved in these communities across the Pioneer Valley, and specifically here in Holyoke, we have plenty of members that live in the area and surrounding areas as well. So if you ever have an issue that's coming up, or something that your city council or planning board or, you know, housing group, whatever the case may be, you can always turn to us. And if you call me up and go, Brendan, I need some help with this. You know, we're trying to get some more information to better understand how this is affecting XYZ. Awesome, Mayor Garcia. I really appreciate it. Let me reach out to our members that are in Holyoke and give you some boots on the ground idea as to what some of the impact is on, you know, whatever the case is that you're looking at. So that's really one of the biggest asset is the almost 2,000 members that we have. But additionally, for that, if there's any type of legislation, usually it's legislation, or, you know, just an idea of an issue that's coming up, and you want to craft legislation specifically, if you want to kind of work to not have something happen, you know, if there's kind of a movement from a local group that you come to us and go, guys, this sounds like it's going to be detrimental to our future. And if we look at it, we can analyze it with our resources here locally, and then at the state association, as well as the national association, second largest trade association in the country, we can help with that. You know, we can do bill analyzation, we can break things down. We can also bring in experts. If you want to do a smart growth walkthrough of your city with literal, you know, national experts come through and walk with you and your city council around your city and say, okay, so how are things looking here? What are you doing? And then they can give some expert advice based on what other comparable cities have done around the country. We can do things like that. It really is endless. Peter did mention community projects. We've done a lot of those with East Hampton. There are plenty of grant funds that are available for all these types of things, the political as well as the community based. And it really just all speaks to exactly what Peter said. Realtors do not buy and sell homes. They you know, don't sell homes, they sell communities. And that's exactly what it is. It's everyone lives and works right where they are. So it's very important for us to be involved in every facet that we can be of our cities throughout the Pioneer Valley. So we're always available. And I actually just recently reached out to, and I was going to say, what is Aaron's new title? Director of Planning and Economic Development, our good friend, Mr. Aaron Vega, since he has stepped down from being in the state legislature. But I actually sent him a link to something that our state association came up with, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure you're aware, and Peter can talk about the actual legislation a little bit more, the housing choice bill that came forward, it's almost 2 years ago now. But what our state association did was create a playbook of how you can start to view this within your city and start to implement it, because there's a lot of great specifics in there, which again, Peter can dive into. But I did reach out to Aaron. And so he has that information, and hopefully we can continue that dialogue as just one example of how we can not just work on specific issues, but be a resource. That's our main thing. We always want to be the source of education and tell the story of real estate throughout the Pioneer Valley. So we're always here to help. But Peter, if you want to talk about housing choice a little bit, that'd be a great time.
Yeah, I'll take a brief dive because we could talk a long time about that. But first, a little bit of context. The reason why the housing choice bill was necessary and is so important is because we're about, if you check around various sources, about 10 million housing units short over the past decade from what we should have built. And so, when we go around to all the different towns, I don't care if it's a small town or a big city here in the Pioneer Valley, it's the same conversation. Why is housing so expensive? And that's the root cause. And it brings some challenges. You hear things that are being tossed around like rent control and different things like that, transfer taxes. And while well-intentioned, those tend to be short-sighted things that actually have the reverse effect. And so we spend a lot of time trying to educate people is, okay, here's what the root issue is, and here's how we solve it. We really, the way to solve the housing crisis or the housing shortage, because that's really what we have, which is manifested in these skyrocketing prices, and it's a huge issue, this affordability of housing. Well, we need to build more housing, and we need to build different kinds of housing, by the way. It doesn't mean the traditional, hey, let's build a single family house, multi-unit housing. As I touched on earlier, there's plenty of downtown areas as we go around the Pioneer Valley that can be redeveloped into multi-use areas, right? You have residential with retail and business use all in the same area, so you have these like micro neighborhoods, micro communities within the city. In fact, the National Association of Realtors has what they call their 10-minute neighborhood. You can get to everything within 10 minutes without driving. So it's a pretty novel concept. But specifically here in Massachusetts, Governor Baker drafted some legislation that was passed, again, as Brendan said, almost a couple years ago now, the housing choice bill, and it allows the good thing is it was passed. The not as good thing is that it has to be adopted by cities and towns on an individual basis. So as we've had these discussions, we've found that some folks don't even know about the bill. Others know about it, but haven't really done anything with it because they don't know how it applies to them. And we find that is more often the case with cities such as Holyoke, as opposed to more rural communities that think that, like, hey, we can definitely use this. So, and I won't go into all the details on that, but as Brendan said, we have a playbook, so to speak, that our state association drafted to really help guide cities and towns. And hey, how can we implement this? And I'll share with you, really one of the biggest pieces of that legislation is that if it's adopted, it allows cities and towns to change the threshold for zoning changes to go from a supermajority to a simple majority, and that's huge. As we go around to talk to various different cities and towns, you hear stories about, well, it would have been great to do this project a few years back, but we couldn't quite get there. We only had 59% or 60%, and you need that supermajority with current rules, and that's a big challenge. So you have most of the people in a community that want something and it still doesn't happen. So and it allows NIMBYism to thrive. It really does. So this is a solution, and the playbook is a great guide to see how it could be implemented in your city. So with that, I'd love to hear from you. We've talked a little bit here, but hopefully you've liked what we've had to say so far. But would love to hear your thoughts on it, and again, tell us what's going on in Holyoke that we need to know about.
Well, thank you, everybody. I would say, Peter, that I guess I fall in that second category you described about municipalities, whether or not they knew about it, or they knew about it but don't know too much, and if whether or not it fits our community. So I definitely would be very interested in learning more on what's going on that front, working with our planning economic development director and trying to understand how we pivot so we can be sure that what we're trying to do in Holyoke, that it contributes to the greater strategy around improving the quality of life for everybody. As far as what's going on in Holyoke, since I started, it's all about rapid recovery at this point. We're doing what we can to commit limited resources toward um, helping businesses and individuals recover from and our greater economy here in Holyoke recover from the pandemic. That, coupled with trying to be sure we're establishing a strong foundation of representation when it comes to making decisions here, not only on our boards and committees, but also decisions that come out of this office, in which Michelle said she signed up for one of the advisory councils, one of 7, and that's what I've been calling my greatest experiment with civic engagement. And that's just to be sure that as we go forward with navigating the complexities behind each of those subcategories, that we're being thoughtful in what neighborhoods and residents want to see transpired as a priority, not only for their neighborhood, but for their city. So we're doing what we can to create that foundation so that as we make decisions, those decisions are reflected by the desires and interests to the greatest extent possible, the constituents of our community. And that hoping in the very near future we can engage in that spirit, that we can engage in a citywide master plan. Our last master plan was drafted in 1999, which, it's around that time. They say you update master plans every 20 years or so, and it's about 20 years at the moment. Certainly priorities shifted, new interests have shifted. For example, 20 years ago we didn't necessarily realize we'd have a marijuana interest in the city. And also 20 years ago, um, uh, issues around climate change and reduction in carbon footprint strategy, that wasn't, although talked about, not necessarily a priority at that time as it is today. So I want to be sure if and when we get to a point where we can start drafting a citywide master plan, that climate resiliency strategies are on the forefront of the identified strategies or objectives in that master plan. But more importantly, it's not about just having the tangible document at the end of the plan. It's about the process that leads to it. People in every corner of our city coming together and brainstorming on what those priorities are for the city. Because what I want to do is try to dismantle, um, government design so that no one person's in total, or group is in total power and control. So I'm trying to facilitate an environment here where every corner of our city is working together to understand what those priorities are, so that decision makers such as our council and myself, we have that tool to help guide our decisions as we try to commit limited resources. Um, uh, so some things to be excited about beyond just that, and I can at no means take any credit for this. There's a lot of work before me that has led up to some new housing construction interests in the city. The development of, you got the Alpaca Mill building where financing was secured to develop. I'm going to get this wrong. I think 90 plus units of new housing. And I think that there's also some new development interest going on around building more condos over at Devonshire's in that area, and I think over Cherry Hill in that area too. But I couldn't agree more on the concerns around not keeping up with the need for housing, which is and the transition team we created that helped establish the 7 advisory councils agreed also, which is why we have that housing mayoral advisory council. I think it's going to be critical in trying to. Um, there's a lot of in this office. It can all the time feel like we're drinking water out of fire hose. There's so many things that come in, and it's very easy to say this is a priority. This is a priority. But again, with all that comes into this office, it's easy to forget about some of those priorities because of whatever circumstance that might exist, that may have existed. And so I'm hoping that these councils will help consistently keep these concerns in the forefront so that we're in line with our hitting our targets, whatever our objectives, identified objectives are between now and the next 3 years, now and the next 10 years, which again goes back to that master plan, why that tool is so critical. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can keep going, or do you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything particular?
Yeah, no, this is all great. I'll just jump in real quick to, say two things. We would love to be some part of the master plan discussion, even as just a resource. I'll use this analogy. When we work with buyers and sellers, we don't tell them what to do. We let them know what their options are. We educate them on what those options are so they can make an informed decision for themselves. And that's really our approach with this. We're not here to tell a city, hey, you have to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really just, hey, here's some options that you may not have been aware of, and here's some resources that we can be a conduit for you to tap into that can be helpful. So from that perspective, we'd love to be a part of that process, and however we can. And we keep talking about when housing comes up, the A word comes up, affordable, right?
Yeah.
And so but I'll tell you, we've stopped talking about affordable housing, and now we talk about housing affordability. And it's a little bit of wordplay, but it's an important changeover, because when you say affordable housing to people, what do they think of? 40B projects. They think of low income housing, and really that's part of the picture, but that doesn't describe the issues that are facing cities like Holyoke right now. It's overall affordability, top to bottom. And in order to address that, you need to cast a wider net. It's not looking at just one type of housing or one strata of price range. So I wanted to make sure we made that point of distinction for you, that we're really looking holistically, if you will, at housing and the issues.
Well, here's an important note when it comes to housing in Holyoke. So Holyoke, interestingly enough, is you have 7 wards, different neighborhoods, and these wards are divided by income. And we have wards, one that I grew up in South Holyoke, where we've focused on concentrated uh, poverty. Not to say it's a negative thing. I think Holyoke, including myself, because it's helped my family growing up, we've taken a lot of pride in helping families that are down and out. The problem that we're having, every year, folks, a lot of work in the neighborhood trying to improve outcomes, and folks wonder why the neighborhood's not improving. And it's not necessarily that the neighborhood's not improving. I think people's lives in that neighborhood improves. It's just there isn't any opportunity for people to stay in the neighborhood. They improve, and so there isn't any balanced market rate options in the neighborhood. And I think Holyoke has been the flagship in Western Massachusetts, probably even throughout the Commonwealth, if I'm not mistaken, in maintaining a strong housing stock and low-income housing, affordable housing. We can certainly use more, but I want to be sure that as we go forward with this, that we're striking a balance between affordable housing and market rate. So in South Holyoke, the median, well, actually downtown, the median household family income is about $17,000 annually. And when I think about that, let's say a family moves here, low income, subsidized unit, has children, kid goes to college, graduates, lands a career, is now making 80 plus. You know, they're not income qualified to stay in the neighborhood, so they'll have to pay market rate, but the unit isn't market rate standard, right? It's one of those things where it's like, well, I don't want to decrease our affordable housing opportunities, but instead add to our existing portfolio where we build new housing some market rate so that folks, can choose to move across the street into a new condo or new, whatever the case may be. So the we want to continue to advocate for affordable housing every time there's a new development. If we can maintain a percentage in those units, great. I also want to be sure that in these neighborhoods that we're striking a balance with quality market rate units as well, so that we have a mixture of things, so folks don't necessarily feel like they have to move up the hill or move to South Hadley or move to Chicopee or other communities outside of Holyoke because there isn't a quality standard um, uh, market rate unit to meet their new lifestyle. Uh,
So true. You make an excellent point there, Mayor Garcia, because if we think of generationally, so my family was from Chicopee, and 4 generations of my family have lived in Chicopee. Um, and we want to provide those opportunities for our young people as they grow. If they want to live in the communities in which they grew up, and we have to provide those job opportunities, those housing opportunities, and
mhm.
and other opportunities for learning. I think the council just passed a bond bill for a new feasibility study for new middle school as well.
Yeah, we're trying to build a new middle school. Yeah, it's a bill to engage in the feasibility phase, a bond. Yeah. Yeah. So in our city, so you have South Holyoke I talked about. Then there's the flats. Flats, they have been able to, because it's not only offering that market rate opportunity, but also an opportunity for families to buy and build wealth, to own a home and whatnot. So in South Holyoke, I think like it's only that whole neighborhood. I don't know, that census tract has over 2,000, 3,000 people living in that census tract, and there's only 1% home ownership. Um, Not a lot of opportunity for folks to get alone a market rate unit where they can move into and rent and have decent housing at a market rate, but also to buy a house in their neighborhood or buy a condo and build some equity and some wealth. The Flats neighborhood has been able, although I'm not thrilled about the the model, as far as the housing building material choices, but the model itself, 2 family homes, affordable opportunities for people of low income as they build their own successes, they can buy and rent the other side and build some wealth. It's turned around the neighborhood completely throughout the last 3 decades, compared to what I remember the neighborhood was when I was a kid. Um, in South Holyoke, I think the Housing Authority currently has some projects happening down there that's trying to do that, similar to the Hope Six project in the Churchill neighborhood, where they had a combination of, actually, it's not just affordable, it's low income housing and home ownership. You guys remember the former Jackson? I'm talking about the projects by the Holyoke High School. At all familiar? I don't know if you remember what was there before that, and now here we are, decades later, and it's still a vibrant neighborhood. It's a similar model that they're working on in South Holyoke, multi-million-dollar construction phase, where they're building, um, again, not only affordable housing units, but also row houses, home ownership, and new streets, new sidewalks happening in that neighborhood, which I'm thrilled to see. I think that's probably my favorite project in the city right now because it's the neighborhood I grew up in. Again, I can't take credit for it. It kind of inherited when I got here, but certainly a project this administration is looking to continue to support as they go forward.
Yeah, you touched on some very key points, and I'll say this: real estate is always an interesting topic to discuss with people because it's a commodity, but it's so unlike other commodities in life because of its uniqueness. But one thing it has in common with all other commodities is the scarcity impact on value, right? And that really is, you list a house today, it doesn't matter what price range is in, and you're going to get swamped with people. That just shows you that there's way more demand than there is supply. And the challenge with programs that set aside affordable units and market rate units, that's great, but it doesn't fix the overall problem of how we got there and why you need that in the first place. And it's like anything, if there's more of it, the price comes down, right? And so that's really why we try to work with cities and towns on that overall approach of, hey, let's build more housing, and all different kinds of housing, by the way. And the other thing you touched on, the low home ownership rates, we have statistics that show clearly home ownership. When you have neighborhoods where there's high home ownership rates, percentages, there's less crime, there's more investment in the property maintenance, schools are better, the whole host, the economy, local economy is better. So it's in a city and town's best interest to have a higher home ownership rate, and that's one of the things that we seek to do. So again, we'd love to be at the table and help partner with finding solutions for this, because we truly believe in home ownership and increasing it.
It's definitely it's a tough balance. Obviously, we want to be sure that everyone has access to good quality services in their neighborhoods, live safely, access our parks safely, have good quality schools. And then there's that concern that as you invest and do these things, values start climbing and people, it's a conversation that always comes up where we get people with a concern around gentrification. Um, it's something that we studied in school. You try to understand best practices across the country, and no matter how much you try to understand it, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to avoid. But instead, I can say, I'm committed to striking that balance, maintaining what we have. I don't want to reduce our affordable housing portfolio at all. So I don't want to see our partners that are sustaining low income and affordable housing in their buildings convert them into market rate buildings, but instead maintain that and then add, to your point, Peter, what the missing elements. So we're doing well here, affordability and low income housing, but the missing elements is market rate and home ownership in those neighborhoods. The qubit, and I got some friends. Just if you don't know, I am a liberal progressive to an extent, um, but and I have friends that are not thrilled about the qubit. I don't know if you know about the qubit loft units off of Ray Street. I'm thrilled about it. I don't know if folks remember what was going on Ray Street. Absolutely nothing. And that building there in the neighborhood off of Main Street. If I had just graduated from college around this time, the qubit was around. My wife and I, girlfriend at the time, would have been looking for an apartment in that building, right, in our neighborhood, market rate. And that's what we need. I think we need, we have the affordability and low income. We need to maintain it, but we need to now balance it and sustain these neighborhoods with a combination of market rate and home ownership.
Absolutely. We need to help these individuals that we're trying to help without pushing them out at the same time. And that is really a hard balance to do, but we're here to help you.
Yeah, like I say, like it's not that the neighborhood's not improving, it's people's lives improve, and when they improve, they leave
Yes.
Holyoke. They go up the hill or they go to another city.
Yes.
So we gotta find ways to keep them here. And that's it. I think that's the missing piece is those houses. My mother just walked in, by the way.
Hi, Mom. Well, we won't keep you too much longer, but one
No,
piece
no
that
worries.
I would like to add, Mayor, is because you touched on it a little bit, is business and commercial development, because you really can't talk residential development without talking about business and commercial. They go hand in hand, and employers, when they're looking to relocate a business or start a business, what are the things that they think about? Is like, well, where are my employees going to live? How are they going to get to work? All
Oh
those
yeah.
kind of things. So they really look at those aspects of the community surrounding where their business is going to be. And so, part of the things that we work on with cities and towns is, making the city or town more attractive to business development, because again, it goes hand in hand with that residential development. And
So
just wanted to point out that that's also something that we can help with.
so I think, and you guys have been watching this longer than I have. My opinion is, you know, Holyoke is in a competitive position. We're geographically located very conveniently. The energy rates are competitive. Um, I think and there is a desire and interest of commercial businesses wanting to. We have to revisit our zoning. I think it's
Great.
limited. Yeah, again, I'm not an expert in the area, but every time these conversations come up, an opportunity where a business comes in, we're always trying to navigate the process of getting a special permit because of some zone change or whatever.
Mm.
I was meeting with a realtor who represents, um, you know, larger commercial business interests. Um, Apparently, like the standards of how they build today, our lots and parcels are too small. And so, because we have all these underutilized alleyways that don't necessarily allow them to expand as big. So I think there's a lot of complexity behind um, the systems we create here internally that make it a challenge for businesses to want to move into the city to the extent of what we want to see. Um, and I think, again, I go back to the master plan. That process is going to be the tool that helps me navigate those challenges. What if the community doesn't know that right now we have a council that makes their decisions based on what they think the neighborhood wants and what they think the community wants, and this process in the master plan allows us to understand and confirm what the neighborhoods want so that when we go in there and try to advocate for something, we can de-escalate the politics as much as possible and reflect the desires and interests of the community so that we can get the change, because time is money for these businesses. It's they're investing in these plans, and you're going through a zone change process or special review or permit or whatever the case may be, 6 months, 8 months later to find out that you can't do it after you've invested thousands of dollars. That's if I was I, I have an open mind and I understand that concern, and I want to do what I can here in this position to try to be more open and de-escalate those issues from happening as much as possible so that Holyoke can experience the growth that you know that we demand here, that it deserves.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we have the beginnings of the conversation, and again, we're here to help. That's our main message today. We would love to help out. Again, just like Michelle is one example of, we have many members that live in Holyoke, and many have lived there their entire lives. So, and have a vested interest in everything you just talked about, making Holyoke an even better place to live. With that, I think we can wrap up, and I'll say I really appreciate your time today, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, on behalf of our association of almost 2,000 members, we appreciate it, and we look forward to furthering discussion and hopefully helping Holyoke move into the future.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia, for your time.
Mayor.
Yeah, thank you.